How do you convince someone to stop eating meat? Did someone persuade you to give up eating meat, or did you conclude on your own that this was the best thing to do? I'm thinking your best bet for influencing others is to make the practice work spectacularly well in your own life. The more admirable you are, the more people will want to emulate your behavior. I think people respond better to example than they do to persuasion, unless you know there's something specific they really want, and that giving up meat is a way they could obtain that. If someone is concerned about their health, you could point to studies that show vegetarians living longer and being more independent into their old age years. If the person wants to help the environment, you could give them information on the impact of cattle farming, chicken farming and fisheries on the environment. If you're talking to a young single male who has trouble meeting girls, you could point out that pretty vegetarian girls prefer vegetarian boys. But for most people, I think they become interested in something like vegetarianism or veganism when they spot someone who does it very well, who makes it fit and work in his or her own life. Your life might be going well for you because of how well you do your job, or how socially confident you are, or how you excel at a hobby you are passionate about. Someone who admires you might never be as good at your job or your avocation as you are. But to just stop eating meat, that's something anyone can do. Those who respect it tend to respect the commitment and the discipline it implies, and that is something they might want to take on as part of their own profile. You don't. It's their choice and their lifestyle, not yours. Even if you do say something to them about it, you'll likely just sound like an asshole who is trying to control them rather than someone trying to make a difference. If you choose not to eat meat, then good for you. However, you have no right to dictate what other people choose to eat. You discover how to be the best at being a manipulative beastard. That is how you learn how to convince a person how to stop a behavior. You have an opinion, that meat is not good for someone, yet they do not share your opinion. So find ways to make them wrong. You sound like a real star of the show. Perhaps you need to start a religion or a cult. You don't. Why should you try and convince someone to stop eating meat? The person you are trying to convince has the right to eat meat if they wish. If they were gluten intolerant, would you convince them to eat foods containing gluten? How would you feel if the person was trying to convince you to give up eating meat? It is okay to have different dietary requirements or preferences. You can lay down the facts or injustices, etc. But I will caution you on this. If you coming from a moral point of view, you may have a tough time. For example, if you tell a Christian, Jew or Muslim that it's wrong or immoral and they believe in their religion and have been eating meat, they won't give it up easily as God has allowed them to eat meat. By saying it's wrong and immoral, they are saying that God was wrong to allow it, etc. You don't. You start weight training yourself and then start eating meat. Like a chicken breast per meal, 3 or 4 a day. Get big and strong and say, shut up all you virtue signaling vegan freaks. You shouldn't really try to. In all honesty, there's nothing worse than someone criticizing your choice in food, especially when it comes to not eating meat. It's easier to convince someone to eat less than it is to convince them to stop eating it at all. I know how bad it is, but I still do it. How on earth would I convince someone else to change their behavior? Eating meat plays to our basic biological drives, which take a lot to overcome. Meat is generally high in protein and energy dense. If food is scarce, then if you can get your hands on it, you should scoff it quickly, get it inside your body and working for your survival as soon as possible. The problem is that, certainly in the affluent Western democracies, for the vast majority of us, food is no longer scarce. We can very easily, and most of us do, obtain an excess of energy and nutrients. It is not only killing our prey species, it is also killing us. So what do? Education. We have to stop the meat eating habit before it forms. Our kids learn mostly through imitation, so if they see us eating meat, they will eat meat. Just don't feed them meat at home or school, but if that is too hard, teach them about quality not quantity. How a small amount of good quality meat is better than piles of lowest possible price cow eyelid and rectum burgers. Teach them how to cook alternatives. You need to reach them how to cook anyway, otherwise they will die young of heart disease anyway. Teach them how their choices have impacts. How you can feed a lot more people with a lot less energy with grain than grain-fed cattle. Chicken is less damaging than beef, for example.